I know, it's been a while. Well, on my other channel, Inside Haiku Apps, I just finished recording a whole series of episodes on calculators. Very exciting stuff. And I realized that none of them did exactly what I wanted. Which means I had to write my own. Because what I want is something that's permanently on screen where I can just go and quickly write up a little equation, simple stuff. 25 times 7.3, that sort of thing. And get the answer and go back to what I'm doing without first opening another app. So, I can do that with DeskCalc. Make it compact, resize it a little, there we go, and there we go, push it up there. Right, what did we say, 25 times 7 point, what was it, 3, something like that. Okay, so that can be done. But now it is there permanently. What if I want to do something else? Let me just get this back. The other thing is it's underneath all my other windows. So now I have to first move other windows out of the way. That's not quite what I had in mind either. So I went and made my own. Let's remove that. And I call it Yab Calc. I know. Such a stunning lack of originality. Well, what can I say? So, how does this work? There's your little thing, and now you can see this is always on top. However, sometimes I want to use the top and I want to get it out of the way and still have it available. So here you see a little downward pointing arrow, and now it's at the bottom. Right, and now there's an upwards pointing arrow, and it's at the top again. Here we can just click in there, 25 times 7.3. Also, it doesn't have the rather ugly bold font that we had in DeskCalc. It's simpler. 34 divided by 6.23. And you can either hit enter or click the little equals button. And there's your answer. So, and here's a little help button as well. So let's go and have a quick look at the source code. Now, the first thing you have to figure out is how does your program remember where it was, if it should start at the top or the bottom. Because I can show you, I'll move it there, close it down, and now it starts at the bottom again. Move it up, close it down. Okay, so the way it does that is, let's use coder, is with a configuration file, obviously. But this time I thought, let me do this in a very haiku-ish way and actually use extended attributes rather than just pump some text into the file. So you can see the first thing we do is we create the file if it doesn't already exist. There is a way to do that in Yab itself. I was a bit lazy, so just boom, system call. You can do that if it's right at the beginning of the program. It doesn't really slow you down that much. You know, what you should be careful with is system calls in the middle of your program. System calls in your main loop. Okay, so we get that the attributes of that file. Now, if it's brand new, just been created, then it won't have a lot of attributes, right? But we list them all, we bump it into a variable there. Right, so if, now we use the instr, I always pronounce it instring, but it is instr function, and we say, is the word position in there? That means that, there's a position, and it's a Boolean, 0 for top, or false for top, and 1 or true for bottom. Right, so if there's nothing, then we set it. Then we set it, attribute set here, to false. In other words, if it's never been used before, then we tell it to start at the top. Okay, so next we look for this extended attribute, and if it doesn't exist, then this variable, which confusingly is almost the same but with a dollar at the end, is empty. In other words, there's nothing to remember from a previous instantation, because look, when I close it down and start it up again, it remembers, because I saved whatever was in there, whether it's a formula or a result, in an extended attribute, and put it back the next time the program runs, right? And so if it is not empty, if there is an input content in the attributes, then I'd do this. For now, I just put it in a variable. We'll do something with it later. All right. A few global variables, not really necessary in Yab, but always a good idea to define your global variables in advance. Right. Also, if I decide that this is too big and I want to make it 350, let's do that now. Let's close this down and make it 350. Right. I really must give myself some space to work with here. And now you can see, oh, it does help to first save your file. See, it's narrower now. But all these buttons are still in their correct places. How on earth did I do that? Because, you know, a button is from 1, 1 to 50, 50. We'll get there. right? Then the height, and VPOS, it's either 0 or 1, or app start, which we just set to 0 because we're going to compute it. And then we move to make window, which is my main container subroutine in which I do things. We're going to skip over the main loop right now. Right. And in make window, the first thing we do is get start positions. I told you we're going to compute where this thing is supposed to be. Right, so we have local variables here, and we start by taking what is the width and the height of the desktop. All right, so first thing we do, right, we get the position, right, from the config file, because we know it has to be there now because I just put it there right on top. So I don't have to check again. All right, and then if that is unequal to 0, then it's yFull, which is the height of the desktop minus app height, which remember is 25, which means then app start is an integer part of the desktop width minus the app width, right? So that was 350 now, it was 450, and so we take this length width from the width of the desktop, right, and we divide that by 2 and take the integer part. That gives us this spot here, which is where it starts. So it's always nicely centered, whether it's up or down. Right? It's always going to be in the center. And whatever weird resolution your screen is, that thing is going to be centered and at the top or at the bottom. Okay, having done that, we now open our window. And there's a bunch of things going on here, right? I'm using bordered, which means there's a thin little border around it. You can't drag it by it, it's too tiny, right? Floating all, it's on all workspaces, and it's above everything else except first click. And then I set the high color. If you look very closely, you'll see these buttons. They're not black, they're sort of blue. It's optional, but it just makes the thing stand out a little bit. On the other hand, don't make it look like a ransom note, please. You know, don't make this one yellow and that one green. Right, and then we move on to the decorate window subroutine. All right, again, we got some local variables there. And then we start first building our button. Right. And you might have thought these were pictures. They're not. These are Unicode characters, which I found in the character map. Right. Now, Yab itself doesn't know about Unicode. Don't use Unicode in variable names. Don't try to split them. But they can be used to decorate the button, because that's just a label. Yab doesn't care how long a byte or a character point is to put it on a button. Right, so that's the exit button. And you can see here, it's 1, 1, 2, app height minus 1. Right, so app height is 25. So this actually is from 1, 1, 2, 25, 24. Almost square. Not quite. Right, and so the rest of these buttons are all calculated. And it takes a bit of trial and error. It really does, you know. Don't think I got it right the first time. To make them look just right. And however much you shrink or grow this little window, you know, they're always going to be in the right place. I mean, obviously, you know, if you put the edge there, then things are going to overlap and it'll be a mess. But, you know, put the common sense there. Now look here. If vpos equals 0, in other words, we're at the top, then move pictures is this Unicode character. And the tips, the tooltip is move to bottom. Let's see if that works. Yeah. Whereas, if it's not, then you use an upward pointing arrow. There it is. And the tooltip is move to top. And so then, having defined that, you say, let's see, we need a little more space here. There, I use that string variable. So with this one command, I now vary this picture according to where it appears. Okay, so then all the other buttons are made the same way, and the calculation gets a bit weird. You know, Yab is not precise. You place your button and you think you got it right, but then when you actually look at them, they don't look right, and you put in a fudge factor. You change 1 pixel to 2 pixels, and you know. So this took me a while, but yeah, I think it looks good. Okay, then you got your text control, which I call input area, and I've got it aligned to the right. Why? Because it looks more like an old calculator. Old calculators from way back in the 80s, they filled in their numbers from the right. Right, and I use system fixed font. This, by the way, is missing in the Yab documentation. I had to work it out myself. Right, and focus is true. Right, and then I put whatever is in this variable, which remember I got from an extended attribute, into the, so you can close it down and it will remember it and put it back. If we put in a formula there, 65 times 8, you can use spaces or not use spaces, whatever. Right, and let's see, close this down, rerun it, there it is. Whatever was in there is going to get put back. Okay, so that brings us to our main loop. All right, so the first thing I do is reactivate on mouse over. Now there's no yellow tab to tell you whether your app is active, right? So, well, you can of course go here and right? But I just think, if you look very closely, you see that my cursor reappears. Right, and so that's a bit of a problem sometimes. I mean, you can quickly do that. I still have to work out that, because it works about 90% of the time, but not always. Yeah, but yeah, it's a little tricky when there's no tab to know whether your thing is active. Something I have to look into. All right, so we pick up the messages sent out by the app. Then we start saying, okay, the exit button, yeah, save the input contents, right? And which means first you get it from the input area, save it to this variable, and then set that into the extended attribute. Right, then the move button. Okay, so first you change the extended attribute. If it was a 0, you make it a 1, or true and false. And if it's a 1, you make it a 0. Now I could move this thing. Now there is a window move command. But in this case, I just close it and recreate it because it works so quickly. It's such a tiny little window. You can't really tell the difference. Right, now the calculate button, right, this one, or when the enter key is hit. Right, so this is where the meat of the work gets done, and guess what? You're not seeing any complicated Yab code to do the actual math. Why is that? Because there is already a very well-developed, sophisticated utility called calc. And so what this app is doing, it's calling calc Okay, I'm not quite sure what happened there, but as I was saying, I have installed calc, and here we go. Let's just redo that. I think I ran into a recording limit. The first file is already a gigabyte. Calc, what word? 65 times 8, I think it was. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. Okay, so that is exactly what this little app of mine now does. And it's refusing to. There we go. And so that shows you how Yab is best used as a front end. Right? Now I could write all the math part of it, to parse that formula and see what's in it and calculate it. But why would I? There's a very good little utility that does it for me, and I can just call that, pick up the answer, display it. And that's where Yab's real strength is. It's in writing front ends. Okay, so I've got my own little calculator, and it's still got a few rough edges. Oh yes, and the help button, I didn't write help, I just call up the help for calc. Right, and that will tell you what calc can do, which is therefore what Yab calc can do. Okay, so this is in the Git repository on SourceForge. Link in show notes. I've made an H package for it, on which you'll find in my portal, and I've now also started putting my code up on Codeberg. Spread the love. So there's still a few things that I want to tinker with on this, but yeah, I'm happy with it. It works the way I want it to. Thanks for watching.